All right, you guys, welcome to the Noble L Show. Now, I just received some really interesting information. I want to thank Christina Dalrymple. I hope I said that correct. Now, I was just reading on the OG channel. I just want to finish up reading this. It's 12 pages. It's a letter from Delano Roosevelt administration. It's an address by the Secretary of the State, and it was done in 1942, but it's a very interesting read. Into a desperate fight because we did this is page 4 of 12 pages. Into a desperate fight because we did not learn. I'm going to read that last thing so it makes sense, right? Let me just read from the paragraph here. Okay, hang on. Okay. We Americans are fighting today because we have been attacked. We are fighting, as I have said, to preserve our existence, our very existence. We and the other free peoples are forced into a desperate fight because we did not learn the lessons of which I have spoken. We are forced to fight because we ignored the simple but fundamental fact that the price of peace and of the preservation of right and freedom among nations is the acceptance of international responsibilities. After the last war, too many nations, including our own, tolerated or participated in attempts to advance their own interest at the expense of any system of collective security and of opportunity for all. Too many of us were blind to the evils which, thus loosed, created growing cancers within and among nations, political suspicions and hatreds. The race of armaments, first stealthily and then the subject of flagrant both economic nationalism and its train of economic depression and misery. And finally, the emergence from the dark place of the looters and thugs who found their opportunity in disorder and disaster. The shadow of a new war fell across the world. War began in 1931 when Japan invaded China. From the time when the first signs of menace to the peace of the world appeared on the horizon, the government of the United States strove increasingly to promote peace on the solid foundation of law, justice, non-intervention, non-aggression, and international collaboration. With growing insistence, we advocated the principles of a broad and constructive world order in political, economic, social, moral, and intellectual relations among nations, principles which must constitute the foundation of any satisfactory future world. We practice these principles in our good neighbor policy, which was applicable to every part of the earth and which we sought to apply not alone in the Western Hemisphere, but in the Pacific area in Europe and everywhere else as well. If you guys want to hear the first 4 pages, go to the original OG channel. I would probably click about 16 minutes in because I was actually reading a lot of the comment section prior to that, right? 16, 18 minutes in, I started reading because I read up to 4 pages over there, all right? Gone too far. When hostilities broke out and wars were declared, our government made every honorable and feasible effort to prevent spread of the conflicts and to safeguard this country against being drawn into war. But danger increased all over the world. Peaceful, unoffending countries, one after another, were brought under the heel of the invader, both in Europe and in Asia. Hitler and the Japanese warlords, by their acts and their official declarations, have made it plain that the purpose of the Japanese is to conquer and dominate virtually one half of the world with one half of its population, while Hitler's purpose is first to conquer continental Europe and then to seize the British Isles and through control of the British fleet to dominate the seven seas. Events have demonstrated beyond question that each of the Axis powers was bent on unlimited conquest. As time went on, it became manifest that the United States and the whole Western Hemisphere were ultimate targets. Conclusive proof was given by the international desperadoes themselves through the publication on September 27, 1940, on the tripartite pact. Thinking of apartheid, I don't know why. Apartheid, I don't know why. Tripartite pact, TRIPARTITE pact, by the Treaty of Alliance, Germany, Japan, and Italy, in effect agreed that in any country not then at war with one of them placed obstacles in the way of the program of conquest of any of them. Three would unite in political, military. Okay. And economic action against that country. This provision was aimed directly at the United States. One of the highest official spokesmen of the Axis powers openly proclaimed that the objective of the three partners was a new world order to be achieved by force. Finally, a realization that these plans and purposes created a state of imminent and acute danger to all remaining peaceful countries, especially to those of the Western Hemisphere, forced us to face the all-important question as to when and where the peaceful nations, including ours, should begin to resist the movement of military aggression in order to make such resistance most effective. It was in three circumstances that our government felt the compelling importance of adopting the policy of aid to Great Britain and to other nations which resisted aggression, as set forth in the Lease Land Act. Lease Land Act, all right, submitted to Congress in 1941, in January 1941. It is scarcely necessary to say that all subsequent utterances and acts of the leaders of Germany, Japan, and Italy have fully confirmed the wisdom and timeliness of the policy of this government in thus proceeding to defend the country before it should be too late. In December 1941, acting in concert, moving in harmony with the worldwide objective, all three launched their assault against us, the spearhead of which was at Pearl Harbor, reasoning that to achieve victory they must conquer us, and to conquer us they must strike before we were prepared to resist successfully. When they made this concerted attack against us, the warlords of Japan and Germany. Scroll down, you guys. Not too far. Okay. All right. When they made this concerted attack against us, the warlords of Japan and Germany must have believed that at the root of our sincere and strong desire. You guys can write to us for this reading at themullings@gmail.com, TheMullings, for the entire document. When they made this concerted attack against us, the warlords of Japan and Germany must have believed that that at the root of our sincere and strong desire for peace lay at a lack of will and of capacity to rise in unity of purpose and to pour all our strength and energy into the battle. They have since begun to learn better at wake and at midday, at Batan and at Corregidor, Corregidor, in the Straits of Massacre and in the Coral Sea, from the sky over Tokyo itself, again at midday, on and over every ocean of the world traversed by our air fleets and our naval and merchant vessels, on every battlefield of the world increasingly supplied with our war materials. They will have final and conclusive answer from our expanding armies, navies, and air forces, operating side by side with our valiant allies and backed by our nationwide industrial power and the courage, the determination, and the ingenuity of our people. That answer is being forged in the fighting spirit which now pervades the people of this country, in the will to victory of the United Nations, in the will to victory of all United Nations. In the vast struggle, we Americans stand united with those who, like ourselves, are fighting for the preservation of their freedom, with those who are fighting to regain the freedom of which they have been brutally deprived, with those who are fighting for the opportunity to achieve freedom. Doesn't this sound like something that was written today by Donald Trump? When Krista sent this to me and I started reading it, I said, God, this sounds like exactly what is happening today. And it sounded like this is something Donald Trump wrote. We have always believed, and we believe today, that all peoples without distinction of race, color, or religion were prepared and willing to accept the responsibilities of liberty and are entitled to its enjoyment. I want to put words in here, you guys. We have always sought and we seek today to encourage and aid all who aspire to freedom to establish their right to it by preparing themselves to assume its obligations. We have striven to meet squarely our own responsibility in this respect in Cuba, in the Philippines, and wherever else it has devolved upon us. It has been our purpose in the past and will remain our purpose in the future to use the full measure of our influence to support attainment of freedom by all peoples who by their acts show themselves worthy to it and ready for it. We who have received from the preceding generations the priceless fruits of the centuries-old struggle for liberty freely accept today the sacrifices which may be needed to pass on to our children an even greater heritage. Our enemies confront us with armed might in every part of the globe. We cannot win this war by standing at our borders and limiting ourselves to beating off attacks. Air, submarine, and other forms of assault can be effectively defeated only if those attacked. Scroll down. Only if those attacks cannot win the war by standing at our borders and limiting ourselves to beating off attacks. Air, submarine, and other forms of assault can be effectively defeated only if those attacks seek out and destroy the sources of attack. We shall send all the aid that we can to our gallant allies. We shall seek out our enemies and attack them at any and every point of the globe at which the destruction of the Axis forces can be accomplished most effectively, most speedily, and most certainly. This was an address in the Franklin Delano Roosevelt administration address by Secretary of State. This was written in 1942, you guys. We know the magnitude of the task before us. We know that its accomplishments will exact unlimited effort and unfaltering courage. However long the road, we shall press on to the final victory. Temporary reverses must not and will not be the occasion for weakness and discouragement. On the contrary, they are the signal of all true soldiers and patriots to strike back all the harder with the superb resolutions which never yields to force or threat of force. Fighting as we are in self-defense, in self-preservation, we must make certain the defeat and destruction of the world invading forces of Hitler and the Japanese warlords. To do this, our people and the peoples of every one of the 28 United Nations must make up their minds to sacrifice time and substance in life itself to an extent unprecedented in history. International desperados, like individual bandits, will not abandon outlawry voluntarily. They will only be stopped by force. I swear this feels like it's being done today. Like this was written today. That's what this feels like. With victory achieved, our first concern must be for those whose sufferings have been almost beyond human endurance. When the armies of the enemies are beaten, the people of so many countries will be starving and without means of producing food, homeless and without means of building shelter. Their fields scorched, their cattle slaughtered, their tools gone, their factories and mines destroyed, their roads and transport wrecked. Upon unknown millions will be far from their homes, prisoners of war, inmates of concentration camps, forced laborers in alien lands, refugee from battle, from cruelty, from starvation, disease and danger of disease, will lurk everywhere. In some countries, confusion and chaos will follow the cessation of hostilities. Victory must be followed by swift and effective action to meet these pressing human needs. I'm on page 7 of 12. At the same time, all countries, those which will need relief and those more fortunate, will be faced with the immediate problems of transition from war to peace. War production must be transformed into production for the peacetime needs of mankind. In some countries, the physical ravages of war must be repaired. In others, agriculture must be reestablished. In all countries, returning soldiers must find place in the work of peace. There will be enormous deficiencies of many kinds of goods. All countries, including ours, will need an immense volume of production. There will therefore exist vast opportunities for useful employment. The termination of the war effort um, will release for use in peaceful pursuits, stirring enthusiasm, the aspirations and energies of youth, technical experiences, and in many industries, ample plants and abundance of tools. The compelling demands of war are revealing how great a supply of goods can be produced for national defense. The needs, the needs of peace should be no less compelling, though some of the means of meeting them must be different. Toward meeting these needs, each and every nation should intensely intensively direct its efforts to the creation of an abundance of peacetime life. This can only be achieved by a combination of the effects of individuals, the efforts of groups, and the efforts of nations. Governments can and must help to focus the energies by encouraging, coordinating, and aiding the efforts of individuals and groups. You guys can write to us for this in its entirety at themallings@gmail.com, plus a lot of the other readings and stuff we now have offering on our books and documents. All right. During this period of transition, the United Nations must continue to act in the spirit of cooperation, which now underlies their war effort to supplement and make more effective the action of countries individually in reestablishing public order, in providing swift relief in meeting the manifold problems of readjustment. Gotta scroll down. All right. Beyond these, there will lie before all countries the great constructive task of building human freedom and Christian morality on firmer and broader foundations than ever before. This task, too, will of necessity call for both national and international action. Within each nation, liberty under law is an essential requirement of progress. The spirit of liberty, when deeply embedded in the minds and hearts of the people, is the most powerful remedy for racial animosities, religious intolerance, ignorance, and all the other evils which prevent men from uniting in the brotherhood of truly civilized existence. It inspires men to acquisition of knowledge and understanding. It is the only real foundation of political and social stability. Liberty is more than a matter of political rights, indispensable as those rights are. In our own country, we have learned from bitter experience that to be truly free, men must have as well economic freedom and economic security, the assurance for all alike of an opportunity to work as free men in the company of free men, to obtain through work the material and spiritual means of life, to advance through the exercise of ability. Gosh, I'm reading this. Such a powerful writing, you guys. I can't even stop reading it. I started reading this and I couldn't stop. I had to put it out there. Okay, men must have as well as economic freedom and economic security, the assurance for all alike of an opportunity to work as free men in the company of free men, to obtain through work the material and spiritual means of life, to advance through the exercise of ability and initiative and enterprise, to make provision against the hazards of human existence. We know that this is true of mankind everywhere. We know that in all countries there has been and there will be there will be increasingly in the future demand for I want to put my own words in here, you guys. In the future demand for a forward movement of social justice, each of us must be resolved that once the war is won, this demand shall be met as speedily and as fully as possible. All these advances in political freedom, in economic betterment, in social justice, and in spiritual values can be achieved by each nation primarily through its own work and effort, mainly through its own policies and actions. They can be made only where there is acceptance and cultivation of the concepts of and the spirit of human rights and human freedom. It is impossible for any nation or group of nations to prescribe the methods or provide the means by which any other nation can accomplish or maintain its own political and economic independence. Be strong, prosper, and attain high spiritual goals. It is possible, however, for all nations to give and to receive help. That which nations can and must do toward helping one another is to take by cooperative action steps for the elimination and impediments and obstructions which prevent the full use by each for the welfare of its people of the energy and resources which are at its command. And the nations can and must again be cooperative cooperative action under common agreement, create such facilities as well as will enable each to increase the effectiveness of its own national efforts. Okay, let's scroll down. I gotta keep reading this. It's such a powerful read. All right, such cooperative action, page 9, you guys. Two more pages, 3 more pages. Such cooperative action is already underway. 28 United Nations have proclaimed their adherence to a program of principles and purposes by which mankind may advance toward higher standards of national and international conduct. That program is embodied in the declaration made on August 14, 1941, by President Roosevelt and Prime Minister Churchill, now known as the Atlantic Charter. Keep in mind, I think it's 209 or more countries signed on to help the alliance and clean up all this corruption, right? Globally, the pledge of the Atlantic Charter is of a system which will give every nation, large or small, a greater assurance of stable peace, greater opportunity for the realization of its aspirations to freedom, and greater facilities for material advancement. But that pledge implies an obligation for each nation to demonstrate its capacity for stable and progressive government to fulfill scrupulous its established duties to other nations, to settle its international differences and disputes by none but peaceful methods, and to make its full contribution to the maintenance of enduring peace. For decades, all nations have lived in the shadow of threatened coercion of war. This has imposed heavy burdens of armament, which in the cases of many nations has absorbed so large a part of their production effort as to leave the remainder of their resources inadequate for maintaining, let alone improving, the economic, social, and cultural standards of the people. Closely related to this has been a burden less obvious, but of immense weight to the inevitable limitation that fear of war imposes on production. Thank you to Krista for this, and thank you to Lila Abyss for all that you guys have been sharing with us here, and all of you out there sharing with us here. All right, so let's see where we are, let alone improving. Okay, we were over here. Absorbed so that large, I'm just going to read this paragraph again. For decades, all nations have lived in the shadow of threatened coercion of war. This has imposed heavy burdens of armament, which, in the case of many nations, have absorbed so large a part of their production effort as to leave the remainder of their resources inadequate for maintaining, let alone improving the economic, social, and cultural standards of their people. Closely related to this has been a burden less obvious but of immense weight, the inevitable limitation that fear of war imposes on productive activity. Many men, groups of men, and even nations have dared not plan, create, or increase the means of production, fearing lest war come and their efforts thus be rendered in vain. No nation can make satisfactory progress while its citizens are in the grip of constant fear of external attack on or interference. It is plain that some international agency must be created which can, by force, if necessary, keep the peace among nations in the future. There must be international cooperative action to set up the mechanisms which can thus ensure peace. This must include eventual adjustment of national armament in such a manner that the rule of law cannot be successfully challenged and that the burden of armament may be reduced to a minimum. In the creation of such mechanisms, there would be a practical and purposeful application of sovereign powers through measures of international cooperation for purpose of safeguarding the peace. Participation by all nations in such measures would be for each its contribution towards its own future security and safety from outside attack. Settlement of disputes by peaceful means, and indeed all processes of international cooperation, presuppose respect for law and obligations. It is plain that one of the institutions which must be established and be given vitality is an international court of justice. It is equally clear that in the process of reestablishing international order, the United Nations must exercise surveillance over aggressor nations until such time as the latter demonstrate their willingness to and ability to live at peace with other nations. How long such surveillance will need to continue must depend upon the rapidity with which the peoples of Germany, Japan, and Italy and their satellites give convincing proof that they have repudiated and abandoned the monstrous philosophy of superior race and conquest by force and have embraced loyally the basic principles of peaceful processes during the formative period of the world organization. Interruption by these aggressors must be rendered impossible. I'm almost done, you guys. One of the greatest of all obstacles which in the past have impeded human progress and afforded breeding grounds for dictators has been extreme nationalism. All will agree that nationalism and its spirit are essential to the healthy and normal political and economic life of a people. But when policies of nationalism, political, economic, social, and moral are carried to such extremes as to exclude and prevent necessary policies of international cooperation, they become dangerous and deadly. Nationalism run riot between the last war and this war, defeated all attempts to carry out indispensable measures of international economic and political action, encouraged and facilitated the rise of dictators, and drove the world straight toward the present war. During this period, narrow and short-sighted nationalism found its most virulent expression in the economic field. It prevented goods and services from flowing in volume at all adequate from nation to nation, and thus severely hampered the work of production, distribution, and consumption, and greatly retarded efforts for social betterment. No nation can make satisfactory progress when it is deprived by its own action or by the action of others of the immeasurable benefits of international exchange of goods and services. The Atlantic Charter declares the right of all nations to access on equal terms to the trade and to the raw materials of the world which are needed for their economic prosperity. This is essential if the legitimate and growing demand for the greatest practical practicable measure of stable employment is to be met. Accomplishment by rising standards of living if the actual and potential losses resulting from limitations on economic activity are to be eliminated. A system must be provided by which this can. I just want to stop and say thank you to the judges. Thank you to all the judges for putting our house in order, eh? For reclaiming all the lands for us here, because God knows, if it wasn't for you guys, my heart goes out to each and every one of you. I am so grateful this day while I'm reading this here. By provided by which this can be assured. In order to accomplish this and to establish among the nations a circle of mutual benefit, excessive trade barriers of the many different kinds must be reduced, and practices which impose injuries on others and divert trade from its natural economic course must be avoided. Equally plain in the need is the need for making national currencies once more freely exchangeable for each other at stable rates of exchange, for a system of financial relations so devised that materials can be produced and ways may be found of moving them where there are markets created by human need, for machinery through which capital may for the development of the world's resources and for the stabilization of economic activity move on equitable terms from financially stronger to financially weaker countries. May be there may be need for some special trade arrangement and for international agreements to handle difficult surplus problems and to meet situations in special areas. These are only some of the things that nations can attempt to do as continuous discussion and experience instruct the judgment. There are bound to be many others. I was shocked to hear that Hudson Bay Company in Toronto, Eaton Center, was going out of business. That was shocking. Probably due to all the, you guys know about all of the so-called people tied up to prepare all this stuff, right? China, wherever. But the new policy should always be guided by cautious and sound judgment, lest we make new mistakes in place of old ones and create new conflicts. Building for future in the economic sphere thus means that each nation must give substance and reality to programs of social and economic progress by augmenting production and using the greater output for the increase of general welfare, but not permitting it to be diverted or checked by special interests, private or public. It is also means that each nation must play its full part in a system of world relations designed to facilitate the production of and movement of goods in response to human needs. With peace among nations reasonably assured, with political stability established, with economic shackles removed, a a vast fund of resources will be released in each nation to meet the needs of progress, to make possible for all of its citizens an advancement toward higher living standards, to invigorate the constructive forces of initiative and enterprise. The nations of the world will then be able to go forward in a manner of their own choosing in all avenues of human betterment for more completely than they have ever, for more completely, what? Of human betterment more completely than they ever have been able to do in the past. They will do so through their own efforts and with, almost done, you guys. Where am I? They will do so through their own efforts and with complete self respect. Continuous self development of nations and individuals in a framework of effective cooperation with others is a sound and logical road to the higher standards of life which we all crave and seek. No nation will find this easy. Neither victory nor any effort from form of post-war settlement will of itself create a millennium. Rather, we shall be offered an opportunity to eliminate vast obstacles and wastes, to make available additional means of advancing national and international standards. International authorities, just make sure all the good people on the planet have finances, because that's all we're asking for now, right? To create new facilities whereby the natural resources of the earth and the products of human hands and brains can be more effectively utilized for the promotion of human welfare, or make sure our 9 billion international promissory notes go into effect now. To make full use of this opportunity, we must be resolved not alone to proclaim the blessings and benefits which we all alike desire for humanity, but to find the mechanisms by which they may be most fully and most speedily attained and be most effectively safeguarded. The manifold tasks that lie ahead will not be accomplished overnight. There will be need for plans developed with careful consideration and carried forward boldly and vigorously. The vision, the resolution, and the skill with which the conditions of peace will be established and developed after the war will be as much a measure of man's capacity for freedom and progress as the fervor and determination which men show in winning the victory. I hope this is the last paragraph, you guys. Let's see. Without. Yes, thank you, God. All right, I'm almost done. I got like 3 more paragraphs, and they're short paragraphs to read. Okay, without impediment to the fullest prosecution of the war, indeed, for its most effective prosecution, the United Nations should, from time to time, as they did in adopting the Atlantic Charter, formulate and proclaim their common views regarding fundamental policies which will chart the mankind a chart from which will chart for mankind a wise course based on enduring spiritual values, and such of in support of such policies, an informed public opinion must be developed. This is a task of intense study, hard thinking, broad vision, and leadership, not for governments alone, but for parents and teachers and clergymen and all those within each nation who provide spiritual, moral, and intellectual guidance. Never did so great and so compelling a duty in the respect devolve upon those who are in positions of responsibility, public and private. For the immediate present, the all important issue is that of winning the war, winning it. Is that all? Is that it? Winning it. Hang on. Hold on, there's more. Okay, last two paragraphs. For the immediate present, the all important issue is that of winning the war, winning it as soon as possible, and winning it decisively. Into that, we must put our utmost effort now and every day until victory is won. A bitter armed attack on human freedom has aroused mankind to new heights of courage, determination, and moral strength. It has evoked a spirit of work, sacrifice, and I don't know about sacrifice, you guys. I think we did enough sacrifice. A spirit, evoke a spirit of work and cooperative effort with the strength, with that strength, and with that spirit, we shall win. International authorities see to it the heirs have all their lands and natural resources returned to them so they can go on the land as the gods that they are, the nobles that they are, to see to it globally that all is implemented properly. Thank you in advance for your speedy response to that matter. Now, you guys can visit us on Boon TV. We've got tons of stuff uploaded there for you to see. Wonderful videos with what's gone on, basically. And yeah, we shared quite a few stuff over here, you guys. See you over on Boon TV. And you can also get all of our wonderful merch. You can get all of our conscious clothing line. You can get our American Indian Moorish American National line and our roses line. And remember, you guys can write to us at themullings@gmail.com. I'm going to show you in a second what I was reading. So you can write to me. When you guys write to me for stuff, all I ask is that you put the name of the document. If you write to us, we have a book list. You can write to us for this document. And in that list, you'll see the name of the reading, the book, the document. You just write to us with that information, the number of the document, if possible, because it makes it so much easier for us to find it in the multitude of things that we have to share. So this is called the Franklin Roosevelt Administration, addressed by Secretary of the State Cordell Hull on the War and Human Freedom. This was written in July 23rd, 1942, Washington, D.C. All right, so you can write to us for that. Remember, you guys, you can now visit us on Boon TV. You can write to us at themullings@gmail.com for a private consultation. You can watch us on the YouTube channels Nobel II. You can join our online tutor school classes, probably turn into a university. And you can join us on our daily email group, and you can write to us on our website. I will put the links to all of this in the description below, right? Hi to Tracy Rockamore. Hi to Horatio. Hi to Horatio Bay. Hi, Tree Roots. Hi, Kiki Smith. John. All of you guys. Krista. I can't remember everybody's name. Divine Wisdom of the Seer. And all of you writing to me out there. And all the people in the comment section. Thank you. And welcome to all the new subscribers. We're almost up to 1,000 on this channel. We're up to 8,000, almost 10,000 on the OG channel. And hopefully we'll get everything back reinstated. And yeah, thanks you guys. And have yourself a great day. And I want to put a hedge of protection around all that is good. Hi, Donald Trump. And I hope you and yours are well. All right. Thank you to all the international authorities. Again, deal with the JPS issue, guys. And remedy that, set off all those. Yeah. All right. Thank you for that. And have yourself a great day.